At my own arrest, my wife said, "You deserve to lose everything," so I took back my kids and made her pay. I'm 36 now, and when I look back on everything, it feels like I was sleepwalking through the early chapters of my life. I grew up in a small town just west of Cincinnati, nothing fancy, just strip malls, high school football, and neighbors who knew too much about your business. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't invisible either. I was that kid who fixed other kids' computers and got laughed at for spending more time with code than with people. After graduating from a low-key state college in 2006 with a degree in computer engineering, I packed up and moved to Minneapolis, hoping the city would offer more than my hometown ever could. I landed a job at this tiny cybersecurity startup, 6 of us in a rented warehouse with broken heating, terrible coffee, and dreams we couldn't afford to say out loud. My starting salary was $52,000 a year, which felt like magic at the time, even though it barely covered rent and ramen. The thing that hooked me wasn't the paycheck, it was the stock options, 175,000 shares at 40 cents each, with the promise that if the company took off, I'd be rich. That if was doing a lot of work. Still, we were building something real, software that could spot holes in digital infrastructure before hackers found them. I pulled 80-hour weeks and sometimes crashed on the office couch, all in the name of this maybe someday future. It was during one of those blurry mornings that I met her. I was running on 2 hours of sleep and half a protein bar when I spilled my entire large black coffee onto someone's MacBook at the cafe near our office. She just blinked at it, then looked up and laughed. That was Rachel. She was 28, working as a dental hygienist, and somehow had more charisma and one sarcastic smile than I had in my entire personality. I felt like an idiot, standing there apologizing, but she waved it off like it wasn't a big deal. I insisted on replacing it, and maxed out my credit card the next day to buy her a new one. Turned out she didn't just accept the gesture, she invited me out for drinks to say thanks. That led to more drinks, long walks through the city at night, and somehow, her laughing at my rambling stories about coding languages like they were actually funny. I was stunned she wanted anything to do with me, much less that we clicked. She had a way of making every room feel lighter just by being in it. 2 years later, in the summer of 2008, we got married. Nothing elaborate, her parents' backyard, folding chairs, a local jazz trio, and 24 guests. We used what was left of our savings for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. It wasn't much, but it had a backyard and was close to decent schools. The commute into the city was rough, at least 45 minutes each way, but we were thinking long-term. We wanted a real home to raise a family in, not some downtown rental filled with noise and strangers. Rachel and I slipped into a routine quickly. She kept working at the dental clinic part-time, while I buried myself in lines of code and software deployment cycles. When Sophie was born in 2010, everything changed. The moment I held her in my arms, I understood every cliché about fatherhood I'd ever heard. I started coming home earlier when I could, tried to be more present, even when I was dead tired. Then Eli came along in 2013, and the chaos doubled. Diapers, sleepless nights, and the constant low-level panic that came with raising small children. Rachel shifted to staying home more, picking up part-time shifts only on weekends. She was amazing with the kids, patient, fun, always on top of everything. And me? I just kept grinding. The startup grew slowly but steadily, and I climbed the ladder. Lead developer, then head of engineering. More responsibility, more hours, but also more shares. I didn't cash them out. I held on to all of them, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd be worth something big someday. At home, things were good. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but good. We had a group of friends in the neighborhood, mostly other parents juggling the same exhaustion and hopes. Summers meant backyard BBQs and water fights. Winters meant sledding and board games by the fireplace. Rachel seemed happy, or at least, I thought she did. I wasn't flashy with money. We drove decent cars, nothing new. Took family trips to the Wisconsin Dells, went camping, saved for Disney every few years. The house was a little cramped, but it felt full in the best way. I thought we were doing the right things, building a life together, staying grounded even when other startup guys were blowing their bonuses on Teslas and weekend getaways. Then in 2020, the house next door sold. A couple moved in, Travis and Denise. He was all muscles, 10 lines, and that annoying brand of cheerfulness that feels like a sales pitch. He ran a fitness blog or some kind of online coaching thing, always outside lifting, filming workout videos with a tripod, or showing off his absurdly perfect abs. Denise barely appeared. She worked at a law firm downtown and seemed to live in her car during the week. At first, I didn't think much of them. New neighbors were just background noise in the usual suburban shuffle. Rachel seemed curious, though. She'd wave when she saw Travis, then started asking about the garage gym he'd set up. A few weeks later, she joined one of his community fitness sessions. I thought it was cool. She deserved something of her own outside of parenting. She came back sweaty, laughing, energized. She said working out made her feel human again. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She started going every couple of days, then it became daily. Then it became scheduled around when I wasn't home. She started wearing new workout clothes, expensive ones. Bought supplements with ingredients I couldn't pronounce. Our grocery bill jumped. She started cooking meals that looked like they came from some paleo magazine. I didn't complain. I was proud of her. She looked great, seemed happy, and I told her so. But slowly, the warmth started to fade. She stopped asking about my work. She'd roll her eyes when I mentioned deadlines or joked about server bugs. Her phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter, now never left her hand. She set a password, tilted the screen away when I walked by. She said it was nothing. I told myself it was nothing, because I didn't want to believe it was anything. Then one evening, as I was reading to Eli before bed, I heard Sophie whispering in the hallway to one of her dolls. Mommy said Travis is stronger than Daddy. I froze. It was such an innocent comment, but it hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at the hallway for a full minute before I could even blink. I told myself again, it's nothing. But that lie didn't hold for much longer. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was paranoid from working too many hours and not sleeping enough. But that excuse unraveled quickly once I started paying attention. Rachel's entire personality began shifting, like she was quietly erasing the life we'd built one supplement, one CrossFit hoodie, one deleted text at a time. She started wearing makeup just to go next door, full face done like she was headed to a party rather than a garage with dumbbells. Her phone became an extension of her body, always in her hand or tucked under her thigh like a secret. If I even glanced at it, she'd shift or make some excuse and walk out of the room. We used to share everything: passcodes, calendars, even dumb little memes, but suddenly everything about her was locked, curated, and off limits. The kids noticed before I did. Sophie started drawing pictures with Coach Travis in them, always next to Rachel, holding hands or high-fiving under rainbows. Eli asked me one night if I was sleeping at work now because Mommy said you're always too busy to be home. That cut deeper than anything. I'd been busting my ass trying to push a new contract through with Broadnet Systems, a company that could potentially change our startup's entire trajectory. We were in crunch mode, chasing down every detail, patching vulnerabilities, prepping for demos. 14-hour days were normal. My team was running on fumes, and I was the one holding the structure together with duct tape and hope. Every day I walked into our cluttered office, it felt like I was standing between success and collapse. I kept thinking, if this deal closes, we're set for life. But at home, things were unraveling fast. Rachel's tone shifted. Everything became an argument. If I asked how her day went, she'd snap that I never really listened. If I mentioned how much I was working, she'd accuse me of caring more about my job than my family. She compared me to Travis constantly, always passive-aggressively. Travis says real men find time for their wives. Or, Travis helped Denise repaint their entire kitchen on a Saturday. Great, Rachel. Maybe Travis has time because he's not responsible for 40 people and the company's last shot at surviving. I started eating dinner alone more often than not. The kids were already fed by the time I got home. Rachel barely made eye contact anymore, and when she did, it was loaded with silent accusation. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday, cold, and we'd just had a software setback that delayed our deployment by a week. I got home a little after 7. Rachel's car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. Too quiet. I checked the kids' rooms. Both asleep. The hallway smelled faintly like men's cologne, not mine. I heard music playing from next door, muffled bass thumping in rhythm. Without thinking, I walked out the back, cut through the yard, and stepped up to the side window of Travis's garage gym. What I saw hit me like a crowbar to the chest. Rachel wasn't working out. She wasn't spotting reps or stretching or sipping on electrolyte water. She was pressed up against Travis in a way that erased any doubt about what had been happening all along. It was undeniable, graphic, and it killed something in me. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I pulled out my phone, hit record, captured 15 seconds, then walked back home like my feet weren't real. I slept in my car that night. Couldn't face her. Couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I called a lawyer the next day and explained everything. He told me to stay calm, act normal, and collect more evidence if I could. Don't confront her, he said, or they'll control the narrative before you even get a chance. So I did what I was told. I went back home, kissed my kids on the forehead like I wasn't dying inside, said good morning to Rachel like I hadn't seen her betraying everything we built. I ate breakfast next to a woman who thought I was too stupid to notice that our life had turned into a lie. That week was hell. Every smile was a mask. Every hug with my children felt like a goodbye I wasn't ready for. Rachel, meanwhile, was chipper, almost giddy. She wore new clothes, did her hair every day, started humming again around the house. It was like catching me in the act of not knowing had reinvigorated her. I had the evidence. I had the legal advice. I had everything ready to move. My plan was simple: get the kids to my parents' place for the weekend, file for divorce, hit her with the truth, and start rebuilding. But I underestimated how far she'd go to control the story. On a Tuesday morning, while I was sitting in a code review meeting, my manager pinged me and told me to come to HR immediately. I thought it was about the acquisition. Maybe some confidentiality clause, maybe a bonus discussion. Instead, 2 uniformed officers were waiting in the room. Rachel had gone to the police that morning and accused me of beating her during an argument. She had pictures, bruises on her arms, and a mark on her face. She claimed I'd snapped when she brought up money. Said I shoved her into a wall. I didn't even get to speak. I was handcuffed in front of my coworkers, walked through the office like I was some kind of predator. I'll never forget the look on my intern's face, pure shock, like her brain couldn't compute what she was seeing. I spent 2 nights in jail. Lost my phone, access to my accounts, my laptop. Rachel filed a restraining order the same day. I couldn't go near my own house. Couldn't call my children. My brother bailed me out on Thursday afternoon, and I spent the next week on his lumpy futon, staring at the ceiling and wondering if this was actually my life now. My company put me on administrative leave, which was their way of stalling until they could fire me quietly. My name hit the local tech news. Minneapolis tech executive accused of domestic abuse. My inbox went dark. Recruiters stopped calling. The startup ghosted me. My professional reputation evaporated in 72 hours. The worst part was the silence from Sophie and Eli. My lawyer tried to get visitation, but the court sided with Rachel temporarily, saying the allegations were too serious. I was granted 2 hours a week in a monitored facility. I had to play Candyland with my kids while a stranger took notes about my tone and facial expressions. My old neighbors turned on me fast. Rachel had been planting seeds for weeks, maybe months. Told everyone I was cold, unpredictable, controlling. The same people I'd shared beers and birthdays with started giving statements to the court. One said she'd seen me yelling at Rachel through a window. Another claimed I grabbed Rachel's arm once in the driveway. All lies. But they were her lies, told early and often. And by the time I tried to speak up, no one cared. The narrative was set. I was the angry tech guy who got too rich, too fast, and broke his wife. Rachel took the house, the car, and the kids. I took a job as a junior developer at a soulless insurance company just to prove I had a paycheck. Nights I drove for a rideshare app, picking up drunk students and praying they wouldn't recognize me from the article that ruined my life. The worst moment came when Eli looked up at me during one of those supervised visits and asked, "Did you stop loving us?" That broke me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to flip the table and tell the truth. But I just squeezed his hand and told him no, never. Even if the world burned around me, I'd still be their dad. I had nothing left except a pile of worthless stock, a thin trail of digital evidence, and the stubborn belief that the truth would matter eventually. I didn't know when, and I didn't know how, but I was going to find a way to take my life back. I just had no idea that moment would come so suddenly, or that it would change everything. Rock bottom isn't a place you recognize right away. It creeps in slow, Until one day you're standing barefoot on the freezing kitchen tiles of your brother's apartment at 3 a.m., eating peanut butter straight from the jar because you can't afford groceries. Listening to the faint sound of traffic outside and realizing this is your life now. I was officially a ghost in my own story. Rachel had everything: the house, the kids, the sympathy, the narrative. And I had nothing but a folder of evidence, a part-time job I hated, and a face people now whispered about behind closed doors. The startup I helped build had gone silent, but I hadn't sold my shares, 175,000 of them, sitting untouched. They were locked, unusable unless a liquidity event happened, which at that point felt about as likely as winning the lottery. I didn't talk to Rachel. Not a single word after the arrest. Everything went through lawyers or third-party mediators. The few times I saw her in the visitation waiting area, she looked composed, clean, and smug, as if she genuinely believed she was the victim in all this. Meanwhile, Eli clung to my neck like I was going to disappear, and Sophie barely looked at me, just stared down at her glitter shoes and picked at the edge of the table. Every supervised visit felt like another slow erosion of who I used to be. I wasn't Dad anymore. I was just the man in the room who brought juice boxes and forced smiles, while some clipboard woman tried to decide whether I was safe enough to be alone with my own children. Then one Friday night in early October, everything changed. I was driving Uber, picking up fares near the university to scrape together gas money and maybe enough for one real meal that week. I parked between shifts, stretched my legs, and pulled out my phone. 58 missed notifications. The group chat from my old coworkers was exploding. Check your email now. Dude, holy shit, are you seeing this? I opened my email and there it was. Broadnet Systems was acquiring our startup. All cash buyout. Final offer price, $187 per share. I stared at the screen, reading the numbers again and again until they finally sank in. 175,000 shares. After taxes and deductions, I was looking at just under $30 million. I sat in that parking lot and dry heaved into my steering wheel while a group of drunk students walked past my car, singing off-key. I called my lawyer first. Then I called my accountant. Then I locked everything down, changed every password, shut down old email addresses, and opened a new bank account under the trust I'd quietly set up a year earlier, just in case this day ever came. The acquisition was set to close in 90 days. I had to keep everything quiet until then. If Rachel caught wind of it early, she'd blow it all up trying to get a piece. And I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting my kids, my future, and the truth. Because no matter how cleanly she thought she'd erased her tracks, Rachel forgot something crucial. People get sloppy when they think they've won. Within 48 hours, the traps started to spring. Rachel sent me an email, sugary sweet, and full of fake concern. Hey, I've been thinking about everything. Maybe we should talk about what's best for the kids. They miss you. Translation: I saw the headlines. I know you're suddenly not poor. Let's pretend I didn't destroy your life, and maybe you'll hand me a blank check. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to my lawyer and kept quiet. The next day, Travis showed up at my usual coffee spot. Hadn't seen him in months. He walked up like we were old friends, flashing that fake smile he probably practiced in the mirror. Man, water under the bridge, right? Amy's sorry. We all make mistakes. I looked him dead in the eye and said, you should leave before I change my mind about pressing charges. He backed off fast, but I knew what was happening. They were circling, like vultures sniffing money. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Rachel didn't reach out again, but I saw subtle moves through the legal channels. Her lawyer filed motions to review our financials, citing a sudden and significant change in my status. She claimed the stock's increase in value technically occurred while we were still married, which wasn't even true. I had the time-stamped cap table and the original agreements showing when everything was granted and when the actual growth happened. She also filed to amend the custody arrangement, arguing my new wealth made me a flight risk. My lawyer laughed when he read that. So you were a broke criminal too dangerous to have around your kids last month, but now you're too rich to be trusted? The hypocrisy would have been hilarious if it weren't so damn insulting. Then, just before Thanksgiving, she showed up at my new apartment. Somehow, she'd found the address, despite all the security I'd put in place. She looked different. No makeup, old hoodie, hair in a bun, like she was trying to appear humble, like she was struggling. But her eyes were the same, calculating, watching every twitch in my expression. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. I wanted the footage. Security cameras were rolling. My phone was in my pocket, recording audio. Rachel sat on my couch like it was still hers and launched into a monologue straight out of a bad soap opera. "Travis manipulated me. He made me think you were cheating. He twisted everything. I didn't want to hurt you. I was scared." I kept my face blank, nodding like I was absorbing something meaningful. Then came the tears. "The kids miss you. We could fix this. Start fresh." And then the dagger. "I talked to my lawyer. I still have rights. That stock valuation increased while we were married. I'm entitled to half, and if we can't resolve this, well, I don't want to bring the abuse claims back into it, but they're still part of your record." There it was. The real reason she came. Not guilt. Not motherhood. Leverage. She thought she could rattle me, maybe scare me into giving her money to make it all go away. I told her I'd have my lawyer contact hers and walked her to the door. She smiled like she'd won again. As soon as she left, I sent the footage to my attorney and called my private investigator. "Dig deeper," I said. "I want everything." Turns out, Rachel had made a hobby out of ruining men. She and Travis weren't just an affair, they were a con team. My PI found evidence of 2 other men in 2 other states who'd been through almost the exact same situation. Same pattern. False accusations. Financial extraction. Strategic custody moves. And when their settlements cleared, Rachel and Travis ghosted. Denise, Travis's ex, was building a case of her own and had been tracking their movements for months. She handed over a treasure trove of emails, photos, call logs. It wasn't just coincidence. It was organized fraud. The court date arrived the following spring. Rachel showed up in a plain dress, no makeup, looking every bit the innocent, struggling single mom. She even brought Sophie and Eli, hoping to trigger sympathy. Her lawyer gave the same tired speech: emotional support, sacrificed career, shared success. My lawyer waited patiently. Then he dropped the hammer. We played the footage, showed the stage bruises, the rehearsed speeches, the planted letters she'd mailed to herself and pretended I wrote. Then came the records from Denise. The bank accounts. The fake identities. The cross-state movements. Rachel went pale. Travis tried to leave the courtroom but was forced to sit through every second. The judge recessed for an hour. When he came back, his voice was steel. Rachel's claim to the stock was dismissed. Custody was granted to me pending a full investigation. And Rachel and Travis? The case was referred to the state prosecutor for fraud and conspiracy. Travis bolted the second court ended, but he didn't get far. Denise's new boyfriend is a state trooper. He was waiting by the exit. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I went home, not to a cell, not to my brother's futon, not to a soulless apartment, but to a house I bought in cash, with 2 bedrooms I painted myself, waiting for my kids. The war wasn't over, but the tide had finally turned. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting back and winning. The week after court felt like stepping out of a bunker into daylight after surviving a bombing raid. You're grateful to be standing, but every part of you flinches at shadows. The kids came to live with me immediately, which should have felt like joy, but it felt more like trying to rebuild a ship mid-sink. Sophie was quiet, cautious, like she didn't trust happiness anymore. Eli followed me from room to room, gripping his stuffed bear like a lifeline. The first night they stayed over, I woke up to both of them curled beside me on the couch, the TV still playing some cartoon none of us had been watching. We were together, yes, but broken things don't become whole overnight, not even when the nightmare ends. I'd moved us into a modest 3-bedroom house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, not flashy, but safe, with a backyard big enough for soccer and a good school nearby. I installed a top-tier security system the day after the court hearing, cameras covering every angle, motion alerts, door sensors, even a panic button on my keychain. Some might have called it overkill, but when you've been ambushed once, you prepare for the next one before it arrives. I set up bedrooms for the kids, let Sophie pick out her own paint color, which ended up being a blinding shade of bubblegum pink, and gave Eli free reign over decorations. The result was a Minecraft jungle with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a plush tower taller than him. The first 2 weeks were chaos. I burned every dinner. Missed the garbage pickup twice. Sent Eli to school without shoes once and forgot Sophie's permission slip for a field trip. I was in way over my head, but I kept going, one breath at a time. I hired a child therapist, Dr. Sarah, calm voice, kind eyes, absolutely no nonsense. She started seeing the kids twice a week, and it didn't take long for Sophie to open up. One day she came home and said, "Mom told me you were dangerous. She said if I loved you, you'd go away forever." I didn't cry until she left the room, but I sat in the hallway for an hour after, trying to remember how to breathe like a person again. Eli started asking less often if I was going to disappear. He stopped flinching when I raised my voice at the TV. It was progress, slow and uneven, but it was real. Meanwhile, the legal fallout from Rachel and Travis's scam kept growing. The DA decided to prosecute both of them. Fraud, perjury, conspiracy across state lines, serious charges, real jail time on the table. Travis, ever the coward, turned on Rachel the moment his lawyer told him federal prison was a possibility. He cried in custody, claiming Rachel was the mastermind, that he was just a pawn, manipulated and coerced. The court didn't buy it, but it didn't matter. His testimony stacked more evidence onto the already massive pile against her. Turns out, Rachel had been at this for years. My investigator found 3 more men, all tech workers, all with eerily similar stories. It wasn't just personal, it was systematic, calculated, and executed with sociopathic precision. Denise, Travis's ex, became an unlikely ally. She helped the prosecution, handed over everything: bank records, burner phone data, encrypted email dumps, all neatly cataloged. She also visited the kids a few times. They remembered her from the neighborhood and seemed to feel safe around her. One afternoon, she brought cookie dough and sat in our kitchen helping Sophie bake while Eli showed her his Minecraft world. It was the calmest day we'd had in months. No noise, no fear, just normal life bleeding slowly back into our space. I didn't trust many people anymore, but I trusted her. She didn't want anything from us. She just wanted to see justice done. The money, meanwhile, had stabilized everything. After taxes, legal fees, and a chunk set aside for the kids' trusts, I was sitting on just under $28 million. I set up structured college funds for both kids, each locked in until they turned 25, and started a foundation to help fathers fight false domestic abuse claims. I called it the ARC Project, named after a phrase I kept repeating to myself during the worst of it. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd gone from barely affording groceries to funding lawyers for other men who were walking the same minefield I just escaped. The foundation helped 3 dads in the first month. By the third, we'd reunited a father with his daughter after a 2-year custody battle based on fabricated claims. Rachel, meanwhile, was unraveling publicly. Her social media persona took a hit after the court hearing. She tried pivoting, posting long, emotional captions about healing, victimhood, self-discovery, but people started seeing through her. Comments turned against her. Brands dropped her. A few mutual acquaintances came forward admitting they'd been pressured to give false statements. The neighborhood moms who once rallied around her went quiet. Some reached out to me privately. One even cried on my doorstep, saying she believed Rachel because she was so convincing. I didn't forgive her. But I didn't slam the door either. I just nodded and went back inside, where my kids were playing with Lego bricks and asking what was for dinner. Then, one afternoon, Rachel emailed me again. No subject line, just, "I've made mistakes. I want to make things right." I didn't respond. She followed up with a longer message. Talked about therapy, redemption, how she was trying to be a better mother. She asked if we could talk in person, just the 2 of us. I forwarded it to my lawyer without replying. The prosecution warned me not to engage. Rachel was under strict no-contact orders, and anything she said could be used in court. Still, she kept trying. 3 more emails. A voicemail that started tearfully and ended with anger. "You always thought you were better than me, but you're not. You're just luckier." The trial date loomed. The kids knew something big was coming. Sophie asked if Mom was going to jail. I told her the truth in pieces, enough for her age. That sometimes adults make terrible choices. That love doesn't excuse hurting people. That I would always, always protect them. Eli just asked if we'd still have pancakes on Saturdays. I told him yes. 1,000 times yes. The night before the trial, I didn't sleep. I walked through the house, checking locks, rereading testimony, replaying every horrible moment I'd survived. I stood outside on the porch as the sun came up, listening to the early birds and wondering how I'd even made it here. I should have been bitter. But instead, I felt clean. Like finally, the storm was breaking. When we walked into court the next morning, Sophie held my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Eli ran ahead toward Dr. Sarah, who was waiting to take him to a separate room during testimony. Rachel was already there, flanked by 2 lawyers and 3 sheriffs. She looked smaller than I remembered, not just physically, but in presence. The performance mask was gone. No Instagram makeup, no charming laugh. Just a person facing everything they thought they'd never be held accountable for. The trial lasted 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury took less than 4 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentencing would come later, but the weight of that word, guilty, felt like exhaling after 2 years underwater. Rachel's bail was revoked. She was let out in cuffs while Sophie buried her face in my chest, and I whispered, "It's over. We're safe." And we were. Not healed, not whole, not yet, but safe. And finally on our way back to something like peace. Rachel was sentenced 3 weeks after the trial ended. 13 years, no parole for the first 6, followed by 5 years of mandatory supervision after release. Travis got 9 years after he took a plea deal. He cried again in court, blamed everything on Rachel, but the judge wasn't moved. He'd played his part, and the system finally played him back. Watching both of them led away in cuffs wasn't satisfying in the way people might expect. It didn't undo what they'd done, didn't fix the time they stole from my life. But it did give me one thing I hadn't had in a long time: closure. After everything, we didn't throw a party, didn't pop champagne, or post anything online. I took the kids to a lake an hour outside the city, and we spent the weekend skipping rocks, eating greasy food from a lakeside shack, and sleeping under the stars. Sophie asked if Mom was gone forever. I told her the truth. Not forever, but for a long time. She didn't say much after that, just stared at the water and held my hand like she was afraid it would disappear. Eli ran through the trees pretending to be a superhero, then curled up beside me in the tent that night and whispered, "I like when it's quiet like this." So did I. Back home, the rhythm of real life returned slowly but steadily. School drop-offs, homework battles, grocery store meltdowns, spilled juice, bedtime stories, and Saturday pancakes. I got better at cooking, better at laundry, better at not losing my mind over socks left on the stairs. My consulting business grew faster than I expected, mostly from referrals and old clients who remembered the work I'd done before everything crashed. I hired a few guys I trusted, some I'd worked with, others I met through the art project. They needed the work. I needed the help. It felt good to build something that wasn't just about profit, but purpose. The ARC project became a bigger part of my life than I'd anticipated. We started getting dozens of emails a week. Men who'd lost custody, been falsely accused, bankrupted, erased by narratives they didn't control. We couldn't save everyone, but we tried. We provided lawyers, therapy referrals, documentation tools, even emergency housing for a few guys who were one step away from homelessness. One case stood out: a father in Nevada, accused of hurting his daughter during a custody exchange. We helped get the footage that proved she'd staged the fall, coached by her mother. He got his son back. He still sends me Christmas cards. I didn't expect to find peace again, not fully. But it's funny how quiet builds up in your bones after a while. How healing comes in small things. The way Sophie starts humming while she paints, how Eli drags his chair closer to mine during dinner, or how I catch myself smiling at a dumb joke they make without faking it. I still have nightmares sometimes. Wake up gasping with that old panic clawing at my chest. But now there's always a small voice or two in the hallway calling, "Dad." That voice pulls me out of the dark. Every single time. Dating isn't on the table. I'm not ready, and I don't know when I will be. The idea of letting someone into this world I fought to rebuild feels too risky right now. My trust is still recovering, slow and cautious, like a dog that's been kicked too many times. I won't bring anyone into my kids' lives until I know, beyond doubt, that they're safe. We've been through enough betrayal to last a lifetime. Occasionally, I still get messages from strangers who followed the case. Some are kind, others are ugly. The internet never forgets, and people pick their side fast, no matter what the courts say. I don't engage. I've learned the hard way that silence isn't weakness, it's power. I let my life speak for me now. Sophie joined the school's science club. Her last project was a model of the solar system made entirely from recycled trash. She won second place. Eli's learning how to code with a kids app, said he wants to make games that help people feel brave. I help when I can, but mostly I just watch in awe of their resilience, of how much strength they've carried for such small shoulders. We planted a tree in the backyard a few weeks ago. Just the three of us. Sophie named it Victory. Eli wanted to name it Pancake, so we compromised and called it Victory Pancake. It's a weird name, but it's ours, and that's what matters now. For the first time in years, my home doesn't feel like a fortress. It feels like a place where things can grow, where trust can be rebuilt, where laughter doesn't feel like a betrayal of the past. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who I am now, and I know what I've fought to protect. My name isn't in headlines anymore. It's on lunchboxes, school forms, bedtime stories, and science fair ribbons. And that's exactly where it belongs.